The history of the United States is full of accidents that changed the course of aviation because no one was prepared for them. Like when a plane landed in a river, or when a plane caught fire and crashed into a swamp, or when a plane lost control and crashed into a frozen river. Today I want to tell you about America's most shocking aviation disasters you'll never forget. Let's start with the first accident, when a flock of birds crashed into the engine of a plane, causing it to crash into the river. We're talking about U.S. Airways Flight 1549. In less than 4 minutes, this aircraft will lose all engine power. Not one engine, both. There will be no checklist designed for this moment. No simulator had fully prepared for it, and no airport will be within safe reach. What happens next will redefine how the world understands pilot skill, decision-making, and survivability. This is the story of a flight that should have ended in disaster, but instead changed aviation forever. January 15, 2009, LaGuardia Airport, New York City. U.S. Airways Flight 1549, an Airbus A320, prepares for a short domestic flight to Charlotte, North Carolina. The weather is cold but stable. Visibility is good. The aircraft is fully operational. Captain Chesley "Sully" Sullenberger and First Officer Jeffrey Skiles are both highly experienced. Passengers board expecting a routine flight lasting just over 2 hours. At 3:25 p.m., the aircraft takes off normally, climbing through 2,800 feet. Everything is proceeding exactly as planned. Then, without warning, the flight path crosses something invisible. A flock of large birds, Canada geese, strikes the aircraft. Almost immediately, both engines ingest birds. The left engine fails. Seconds later, the right engine fails. The cockpit fills with the sound of silence. No thrust, no power. This scenario is nearly unheard of. Pilots are trained for single-engine failures, not total loss of power at low altitude. The crew reacts instantly. They attempt engine restart procedures. They contact air traffic control. They assess nearby airports. But altitude is bleeding away rapidly. Time is now measured in seconds. Air traffic control offers a return to LaGuardia. Another airport is suggested in New Jersey. But calculations happen faster than words. The aircraft does not have the altitude. Turning back risks stalling over the city. Captain Sullenberger makes a decision that will define aviation history. He looks forward. There's a river. The Hudson River becomes the only viable option. There is no checklist for landing a jetliner on water in the middle of a city. The crew configures the aircraft manually. They maintain precise glide speed. They prepare the cabin. In less than 3 minutes after the bird strike, the aircraft touches down on the Hudson. The landing is violent but controlled. The fuselage remains intact. The aircraft floats. All 155 people on board survive. Ferries and rescue boats reach the aircraft within minutes. What could have been the worst aviation disaster in New York history becomes known as the Miracle on the Hudson. The investigation confirms complete dual-engine failure caused by bird ingestion. No mechanical fault. Correct crew response under unprecedented conditions. But the impact goes far beyond survival. After Flight 1549, aviation changed. Bird strike risk assessments were updated worldwide. Engine certification standards were re-evaluated. Simulator training began including total power loss scenarios. CRM and decision-making under ambiguity gained new emphasis. This accident proved something fundamental. Technology matters, but human judgment matters more. U.S. Airways Flight 1549 didn't just save lives, It reshaped how aviation understands emergencies, preparation, and the limits of automation, by proving that sometimes the most critical system in an aircraft is still the human mind. But although there were survivors in this accident, in the next one, there were no survivors, when an unexpected fire caused an unprecedented accident. We are talking about ValuJet Flight 592. In just 10 minutes, this aircraft will plunge into the Florida Everglades at full speed. There will be no distress call, no chance to turn back, no time to understand what's happening. The pilots will fight an invisible enemy spreading through the cabin and cockpit. And the cause won't be weather. It won't be sabotage. It won't be mechanical failure in flight. It will be cargo that should never have been there. May 11, 1996, Miami International Airport. ValuJet Flight 592, a McDonnell Douglas DC-9, prepares to depart for Atlanta. The weather is good. The aircraft is serviceable. The crew is experienced. Passengers board expecting a routine flight lasting barely 2 hours. Below the cabin floor, in the cargo hold, several chemical oxygen generators are loaded. They are mislabeled. They are improperly packed, and they are still capable of activating. No one in the cockpit is aware of the danger beneath their feet. The aircraft taxis and takes off normally. For a few minutes, everything is perfectly calm. 6 minutes after takeoff, a flight attendant enters the cockpit. She reports a strange smell. Moments later, smoke begins to seep into the cabin. In the cargo hold, one of the oxygen generators has activated, likely triggered by movement during loading. This sets off a chain reaction. Generator after generator ignites, producing intense heat and pure oxygen. A fire erupts, fueled by materials not designed to withstand it. The crew begins troubleshooting. They don oxygen masks. They request an immediate return to Miami. But the smoke is increasing rapidly. Visibility is degrading by the second. As the fire intensifies, critical systems begin to fail. Electrical wiring burns. Flight controls degrade. The cockpit fills with thick smoke. The pilots struggle to see their instruments. They declare an emergency and attempt to descend. But the DC-9 was never designed with fire detection or suppression in the cargo compartment. The crew has no way to fight the fire. Seconds later, control of the aircraft is lost. The plane enters a steep descent and impacts the Everglades at high speed. Flight 592 is destroyed instantly. There are no survivors. All 110 people on board lose their lives. The investigation uncovers systemic failures. Dangerous cargo mislabeled as safe. Oxygen generators shipped without safety caps. Contractors inadequately trained. No fire detection or suppression in cargo holds. Regulatory oversight gaps. This crash fundamentally changed aviation safety. After ValuJet Flight 592, cargo fire detection systems became mandatory. Fire suppression systems were installed in cargo holds. Transport of oxygen generators was strictly regulated. Hazardous materials handling rules were overhauled. Airline oversight of contractors was strengthened. The lesson was brutal but clear. An airplane doesn't need to fail in the air to be destroyed. Sometimes, the deadliest threat is already on board, quiet, invisible, and ignored. ValuJet Flight 592 proved that what you carry matters just as much as how you fly. But unfortunately, it wasn't the only accident that happened in the United States. The next one, due to a technical error, caused the death of everyone on board. Northwest Airlines Flight 255. In less than 10 minutes, this aircraft will crash seconds after takeoff, explode in a residential area, and leave only one survivor. There will be no engine failure, no bad weather, no emergency call for help. The reason will be terrifyingly simple. The plane was never properly configured to fly, and the one system designed to stop that mistake never spoke up. August 16, 1987, Detroit Metropolitan Airport. Northwest Airlines Flight 255, a McDonnell Douglas MD-82, prepares to depart for Phoenix with a stop in Santa Ana. It's a normal summer evening, clear weather, no operational pressure. The aircraft has just arrived from Minneapolis. The crew is experienced. Passengers are calm. This should have been a textbook departure. Nothing on the ramp suggests danger. But inside the cockpit, something critical is missing. As the aircraft taxis to the runway, the crew runs through their checklists, but they skip a crucial step. The flaps and slats are never extended. On an MD-82, taking off without them is catastrophic. Normally, this error would be impossible to miss. Why? Because the aircraft is equipped with a takeoff warning system, an alarm designed to sound loudly if the plane is not configured correctly. But when the throttles are advanced, nothing happens. No warning, no horn, no alert. The system is silent. The crew believes everything is fine, and they continue. The MD-82 accelerates down runway 3C. Rotation speed is reached. The captain pulls back on the controls. The aircraft lifts off. Barely. Without flaps or slats, the wings cannot generate enough lift. The plane immediately begins to roll left. The crew has no time to diagnose the problem. The aircraft stalls at low altitude, strikes a light pole, hits an airport building, and crashes into a highway interchange. Fuel ignites on impact. The crash happens 20 seconds after liftoff. Flight 255 is destroyed before anyone can react. Out of 155 people on board, only one child survives. The investigation uncovers a devastating chain of failures. Flaps and slats never set. Checklist discipline broken. The takeoff warning system was inoperative. Electrical power configuration prevented the alarm from working. No final cross-check caught the error. This accident changed aviation forever. After Flight 255, takeoff warning systems became non-negotiable safety items. Pre-takeoff checklist discipline was rewritten and reinforced. Crew Resource Management (CRM) training expanded globally. Airlines emphasized configuration verification before every takeoff. The lesson was painfully clear. A perfectly good airplane can be destroyed by a single missed step. Northwest Airlines Flight 255 proved that in aviation, the most dangerous failures aren't dramatic. They're silent. But sometimes not all accidents end in tragedy. Some change history for the better. The following story is about a plane that crashed directly into a frozen river. We're talking about Air Florida Flight 90. In less than 8 minutes, this aircraft will slide off the runway, strike a bridge filled with cars, and sink into an icy river. Not because of an explosion, not because of a mechanical failure in the air, but because something that looked harmless was never removed. The passengers don't know it yet. The crew doesn't fully realize it yet. But Air Florida Flight 90 is already doomed before it even leaves the ground. January 13, 1982. Washington, D.C. is paralyzed by a historic snowstorm. Flight 90, a Boeing 737-200, prepares to depart for Fort Lauderdale with a stop in Tampa. The aircraft is delayed for hours. Snow and ice coat the airport. Temperatures are well below freezing. But technically, everything looks acceptable. The plane has been de-iced earlier, engines are running, the crew is experienced. Flights are departing all around them. From the cockpit, it looks like just another difficult winter operation. but conditions outside are silently changing. As the aircraft taxis toward the runway, snow continues to fall. Ice begins to reaccumulate on the wings. At the same time, another problem appears, one that's harder to see. The engine pressure ratio, EPR, readings look normal, but they are false. Snow and ice have entered the engine sensors. The engines are producing less thrust than indicated, but the cockpit instruments lie. The first officer expresses concern. He mentions something doesn't feel right. Acceleration seems weak, but the numbers look correct, and the numbers win. The crew continues. The aircraft lines up on runway 36. Takeoff power is set. But the engines are underperforming. The wings are contaminated with ice and snow. Rotation speed is reached, barely. The aircraft lifts off, then immediately begins to sink. The wings, coated in ice, cannot generate enough lift. The Boeing 737 clips the 14th Street Bridge, smashing into vehicles stopped in traffic. Cars are thrown into the freezing Potomac River. The aircraft breaks apart and plunges into the water. Within seconds, Flight 90 is gone. Only 5 people survive. 74 passengers, 5 crew members, and 4 people on the bridge are killed. The investigation reveals a brutal chain of failures. Inadequate de-icing procedures. No mandatory second de-icing after delays. Misleading engine instruments. Poor winter training. Pressure to depart despite extreme conditions. This accident changed aviation forever. After Flight 90, ground de-icing rules were rewritten. Ice contamination became a zero-tolerance issue. Engine instrumentation was redesigned. Winter operations training became mandatory worldwide. The final lesson was simple and deadly. Ice doesn't need to be thick to kill an airplane, and trusting instruments without questioning reality can be fatal. Air Florida Flight 90 proved that some accidents don't begin in the air. They begin while you're still on the ground, waiting to take off. And to conclude, I want to leave you with the last accident, in which the plane lost its tail and control mid-flight, crashing into a residential area. We're talking about the American Airlines Flight 587 accident. It was 9 a.m. in New York when a thunderous blast shattered the calm of Bell Harbor, Queens. A fireball fell from the sky, homes in flames, shattered windows, people screaming, running, confused, terrified. A passenger plane had just crashed, right in the middle of a neighborhood. Just 2 months had passed since the 9/11 attacks. The entire city feared the worst. Was it another terrorist strike? A bomb on board? A pilot error? A catastrophic failure? As alarms blared across the state, emergency protocols were activated. But as investigators reached the wreckage, they discovered something no one could understand. The aircraft hadn't exploded in midair, it had lost its tail. This is the story of American Airlines Flight 587, the disaster that shook the world, just as it was beginning to heal. It was Monday, November 12, 2001. American Airlines Flight 587 was preparing to depart from New York's JFK Airport en route to Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic. On board, 251 passengers and 9 crew members. Many were Dominican families returning home. Others, simply loved ones on their way back. At the controls, Captain Edward States with over 8,000 hours of experience. By his side, First Officer Sten Moline. The aircraft, an Airbus A300 in service for over 13 years. A routine flight, a calm day. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. At 9:11 a.m., the plane began its takeoff roll on runway 31L. What no one knew was that the next few minutes would change history. At 9:11 a.m., Flight 587 begins its takeoff. Just minutes earlier, a Japan Airlines Boeing 747 had departed from the same runway, leaving behind a powerful, invisible trail of turbulent air. The American Airlines Airbus A300 climbs steadily. Then, it begins to shake. Inside the cockpit, First Officer Sten Moline feels the jolt. He recognizes the signs of wake turbulence, chaotic air left by a much larger aircraft. He responds using the aircraft's rudder, a massive vertical fin that controls side-to-side movement. But his inputs are sharp, aggressive. Rudder left, rudder right, over and over. Within seconds, the plane isn't flying, it's vibrating. The structure strains under pressure. Then, a deafening crack. The vertical stabilizer, the plane's tail, breaks off completely. With no tail, the aircraft becomes uncontrollable. It spirals downward, twisting and breaking apart mid-air. It all happens in just 103 seconds after takeoff. Flight 587 is lost. What you will hear below is the actual black box recording. Discretion is advised.
You all right? Yeah, I'm fine. Hang on to it. Hang on to it. Full power, please. I'm stuck in it. Get out of it. Get out of it.
The plane crashed into Bell Harbor, a quiet neighborhood in Queens. Homes were obliterated, walls collapsed, cars on fire, people trapped under rubble. Thick black smoke covered the streets, roofs littered with twisted metal. The smell of jet fuel and burning debris filled the air. Neighbors screamed. Bodies had landed in their backyards. No one understood what had happened. Many feared this was another attack. Just 2 months after 9/11, the trauma was still raw. Could another plane really have fallen on New York? News outlets went live. The nation held its breath again. But this time, the threat hadn't come from the outside. The question was immediate. Why did the plane break apart midair? Wreckage revealed something chilling. The aircraft's tail, the vertical stabilizer, had completely separated from the fuselage, and it wasn't a bomb. It wasn't a random structural failure. It was a human reaction taken too far. The flight data recorder showed that after encountering the 747's wake turbulence, First Officer Sten Moline made multiple aggressive rudder inputs, side to side, fast, forceful. Why? He'd been trained to counter turbulence quickly, but what he didn't know was that in the Airbus A300, those rudder movements could generate massive aerodynamic loads when repeated intensely. He was trying to stabilize the aircraft, but in doing so, he sealed its fate. The tail simply couldn't withstand the stress. Airbus, the NTSB, and the FAA spent months running simulations and analyzing training protocols. Their conclusion was devastating. The rudder system allowed extreme inputs, and pilots were never warned how dangerous that could be. It wasn't just a pilot error, it was a system error, a knowledge gap that cost 265 lives. 265 lives were lost that day. Fathers, mothers, children, grandparents, entire families, torn from the sky in just 2 minutes. The Dominican community in New York and Santo Domingo was left heartbroken, and the pain still lingers. In the aftermath, manuals were rewritten, simulators updated, systems revised, but for the loved ones left behind, none of it will ever be enough. Because Flight 587 reminds us of one devastating truth. In aviation, as in life, even the smallest mistakes can lead to unimaginable loss. And when the sky takes someone away, all that remains is silence and memory.